All right, everybody, I have got 6:30 right on the nose, so let's call to order this evening's Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group for November 13th, 2023. We have a roll call.
Yes, Jordan Woodron.
Present.
Randy Lauer.
Here.
Carol Allen.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
Twyla Harrington.
Here.
Tammy Stephenson.
Here.
Rich Allen.
Here.
Everybody is here, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. All right, on number 2, public comment this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment for anything that is not on the agenda this evening. Looking around in chambers, I do not see anybody present today, so let's look out in Zoom land. Anybody from the public wanting to speak on a non-agenda item? All right, we're going to close public comment. Move on to number 3, consent agenda. Minutes for October 23rd, 2023, regular meeting. Assuming everybody's had a chance to review. No roll call here, right? This is just.
Somebody has to make a motion and second it. And
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from October 23rd, 2023.
I'll second.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes from October 23rd, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That consent agenda carries. So on to number 4, review of charge from City Council.
all right, Mr. Chair, I just figured it was a good time just to read the 2 sentences from the resolution to remind ourselves what we're supposed to be doing. The Public Safety Working Group is tasked with identifying what questions should be considered in preparing for the upcoming IGA renegotiations to gather the necessary information to address these questions and request the retention of consultants or studies to assist in the gathering of the information. So essentially, as I think I've called it before, is essentially lay out a roadmap on what should the city be pursuing in terms of information or experts to get us the information we need to make intelligent decisions for the citizens, for fire and police services. And just to add one more thing, that the committee does not make a recommendation as to do what we should do. It's just what are the things that we should be looking to find out to make that decision. So.
Okay. Any other comment there from anybody? Ken?
No, it's just pretty basic.
Yes, very basic. Very
2 sentences.
20,000 mile view. So moving on, finalize the recommendations to council. So we've already been sent a couple of documents from Ray outlining. Ray, are you walking us through this or?
Sure.
Okay.
Be happy to.
Thank you.
But then it's kind of up to you guys to discuss and make any changes you want. When it comes to, we'll start with law enforcement. On that one, I took a lot of notes after the last meeting when we had the 3 law enforcement experts here. I think the first thing that we've talked about is trying to figure out what our current level of service is and what it should be for a similarly sized city, which might include other, similar cities. Maybe get a consultant to say, this is what you have on the road, this is what you're being covered. Is it adequate, inadequate, generally for cities of your size, to get that input? The other thing that goes along with that, I think, is that the citizens, you or the council should create some group for what level of service do we want in the city? Because if you're going to negotiate with either Multnomah County or Gresham, or get a consultant to tell you what it would cost to start a police department, their first thing they're going to go is, well, what FTE do you want? They're going to want to know what kind of level of service you're going to need, and unless you want to just go with what we currently have, you're going to have to be able to determine what should be that level of service. And along with that, at number 2, is, does the city want to consider other non-sworn law enforcement type individuals who are obviously cheaper and more directly under our control than what we have now? I think it says, as I've kind of toned it before, is that maybe we use Multnomah County for the baseline law enforcement. You know, we do deputies on the road 24/7 covering the city with sergeants, and we have resource deputy, maybe another resource deputy, maybe code compliance, another one of those, maybe a park ranger. What do we add to maybe beef up what we have now? And so looking at those options for cost, and once you figure out what kind of level of service you want and how you might want to meet that level of service, then you can ask Multnomah County and Gresham, all right, here's what we decided we want. What are you going to charge us for? You know, can you come up with it? And I know talking to Gresham last week a little bit about it, I assume they're going to take 4 to 6 months. Multnomah County, the same thing, to start coming up numbers. It's going to take a while for them to come up with numbers once they do all that, because there's a lot of information they need to gather from internally to figure out, well, what does it cost? Because, you know, when they do these numbers, you don't just say, oh, you pay X amount of dollars for this deputy, and that's what it's going to cost you. No, there's all these back charges for a certain 0.97% of HR, because they have to deal with, they have an HR department so big to handle all the employees, and that one person is going to take up X amount of their time. You know, in terms of payroll, how much in the finance department, you know, 0.0097%, and they do all these numbers to calculate what the true cost of that employee is. And so that's why it takes them a long time to figure out what it would cost for that. And then once you get that number, then another thing I put down there was, well, then go to Gresham, Multnomah County and say, okay, you know, what would you charge us for that? Then the number 5 I put on there, we've talked about before, and this may not be because anybody thinks it's doable necessarily, but it's a question the citizens ask all the time. How do we get the Troutdale Police Department back? All right, well, a suggestion may be to hire a consultant to investigate what it would cost to recreate the Troutdale Police Department. What are the capital costs to set it up, get it going, do the recruitment for officers and deputies? And then what it would have cost on an annual basis remember, once you figure out what that service level is, well, then that expert can plug in what it would cost for your own department. And part of that, I think, as you heard from Mayor Kudra last time we were here, it's probably part of that should be, well, does Wood Village and Fairview want to go in with us and have a 3 cities police department? You know, can we maybe save a little money that way? So that's kind of another question put on here. And the other one, number 6, is a little easier, that if that citizen group or the council, whoever wants to do it, comes up with that desired level of service, if it includes more FTE for Troutdale, then I'll get Eric Mueller to figure out what's it going to cost us to hire a park ranger, to hire another code of compliance officer, et cetera. Figure out that cost. And then it sounded like at the same time, when we had the last meeting, is we wanted to get a report from MCSO, if possible, the discretionary versus non-discretionary time that Dave Nelson talked about. We wanted to get a percentage of the in-district and out-of-district. And my understanding from talking to Captain Asbo last week, they have, for the discretionary and non-discretionary time, he's not sure if they track that, but he does know they do have generally in-district and out-of-district. And it may be more of a snapshot, because there's so many deputies out there running around, maybe just a boatload of data, that maybe it's just you cherry pick, all right, let's pick like 10 different shifts just to get an idea what the averages are, something like that, maybe something that may be doable. You know, the other interesting question too, you all talked about, is kind of determine, well, what if we didn't do anything? What if we just said, nah, we'll just take off the shelf Multnomah County Sheriff deputy protection out here? What would the county provide for out here? Interesting question, because we all pay taxes to Multnomah County, and so we're entitled to something. And you, Rich, and maybe Tanny was involved, back in 2014, was that even a question?
If we didn't pay, what would we get?
Yeah, what did we get anyway?
When we did the police thing,
Yeah,
Yeah, it came up.
it never really got to that point.
Well, the question came up, but I don't think we seriously thought about it.
At council,
Was that council? Yeah, I
Wasn't
think it was.
budget.
It wasn't budget, no.
it's an interesting
Right.
question, because it's almost like should be a credit against the overall service level dollar. You know, you logically think, all right, well, if we already have X built in, because we live in the county, say $500,000 a year worth of law enforcement services, and we calculate out what we want ours to be, shouldn't we get $500,000 credit off the top? I mean, I'm just.
I don't think taxes work that way.
No, but in theory, that's would be the question, and why it's not a stupid question, it's like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, just so you know, at the time, it didn't have legs, it didn't take off.
yeah.
It was, sorry.
It didn't have legs, it didn't take off. I mean, the question came up, there wasn't anything anybody wanted to pursue.
Because I guess it presumes the other one too, is, well, we never really thought about it or sent any officers, deputies out there, because you had your own police department.
Yeah,
So we didn't provide any coverage anyway. Okay, even though they did, they would back up our officers.
They did.
Right.
quite often.
They back up Gresham, they back up Portland right now.
Yeah, they back up, so. And then the other thing is that, the last thing is I have on the list, and this is just from me dealing with it the last 7 years, is that contract was fine for a first shot across the barrel, you know, but there's a lot of things that are vague in that IGA that really needs greater clarification. And I mean, I always use the example of the police chief. You know, we get charged for 2/3 of a time of a command officer to be our chief of police. All 4 of them we've had in the last 7 years have been wonderful individuals, great people, but none of them have spent more than 10 or 20% ever their time doing Troutdale work, because the county gives them full-time work. You know, like right now, Captain Asbo, he's the head of the whole patrol division. Okay, and he's supposed to have 2/3, that's only a 1/3 position? No, it's a full-time position. So they add our chief duties onto another full-time responsibility. And that's something that's have to be clarified to them, hold it. You know, we got to make sure that we have whatever we agreed to in the contract, we really are going to get that amount of hours out of a police chief.
Or there's some sort of penalty.
Right,
Or refund.
right. So that was the last thing on the list, is that's in the contract with, and Gresham or Multnomah County, we need to know that in either one of them.
And I was gonna say one thing, when they were doing their Amway presentation for Multnomah County Police,
Yeah.
you know, they said that our services would be taken care of because we were under contract. Somebody else would be shorted and we would be covered. We would have everything that we were supposed to have.
Right. And I think they were referring to
It's not the case.
2 patrol deputies, right? We would get the 2 patrol deputies, like if they were short deputies, we'd always get, we have pretty much gotten our 2 deputies in those districts. But the question, that you kind of beg the question there though, well, if you short other areas and there's a problem in those other areas, don't our deputies just go over there anyway?
Yeah.
And that's that in-district, out-of-district question. It's a legitimate question.
I believe they gave an answer to Fairview when Fairview asked the question. They asked, you know, what are the comparisons to in-district compared to out-of-district? I believe they gave them an answer. Obviously, I'm not privy to what that answer was, but I know the secondary question was risen. Is that dedicated police time in district, or is that coming from Troutdale, passing through Fairview on Halsey on your way to a call on 181st to back up Gresham?
Yeah.
You know, what does in district mean? Does it mean you've taken a call and you're spending time inside Troutdale doing police service, doing police work? Or does it mean I've left the police station to head to Wood Village and I've passed through Troutdale, so I spent 3 minutes in Troutdale that day? Right, so clarification on what that means as well, because they could come up with a number. Hey, we're in district 79% of the time.
The problem is, and I've seen this several times, how many of you have seen this, where you see a deputy leaving the police building here, heading out to go to Savi's Island or the Gorge, and I've sat there and I've watched them watch a traffic violation right in front of them, and they just keep going. They don't do anything.
It happens all the time.
It's like, okay, he must be going somewhere else and he doesn't care yet.
He hasn't been told to care
He
yet.
hasn't been told to
And how do we
care.
take control of that, is kind of the.
We don't.
Yeah, actually, that's one of those things we don't. I mean, I've been pushing as hard as I can to get, you know, more tickets than warnings issued, but
Yes.
I've been doing that for 7 years, all 4 of those chiefs, and it's not getting any better.
Well, and I think therein lies the question. How do we get control of that? And it's not necessarily that we can't with Multnomah County. It's unlikely, not even highly unlikely. It's just unlikely right now where we sit as far as how we control the sheriff's department. We don't, and we can't. But we do have a say as to holding them accountable to the contract that they signed, that we signed, that we pay for, so.
But if we truly had 67% of the police chief's mind share going to Troutdale, do you think things would change?
Yes.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
It's interesting.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and so maybe it's sergeant, or maybe it's somebody else, maybe it's, but there has to be consequences for them not living up to their end of the contract either, so.
You're right.
And it's somebody has to hold them accountable from the city, and it's tough for you to do it, because you can't just babysit Multnomah County Sheriff either.
No, but it's interesting too, when I had coffee with the sheriff, Nicole,
Motor City of
about a
Dawn.
year ago, when I asked her, talked to her about this 2/3, she goes, well, what are you missing when they don't spend 2/3 time there? Well, it kind of begs the question, well, I don't know, because I haven't been spending the 2/3 time. But I also remember that, when Monty was our chief, and I don't think he had a real strong other responsibility. I mean, he had other things that he had to do, of course, with the sheriff's office. But I remember whenever we had a complaint from the citizen, he would go out to the citizen's house. And I would love to see.
Neighborhood policing.
Yeah, I'd love to see our chief, who actually is the face of, the department, for Troutdale, going out there and meeting with our citizens, if there's needs.
Not just every other year when they change the police chief,
Right,
show up in the paper.
right, show up here, yeah.
And that's come up in our group as well, as we don't have somebody who's policing the streets anymore. And so, the I need help, can you come, and they don't come, right? Because it's down on the priority list. But I think people in
And as
Troutdale
everyone's
really
there,
want
but
that,
to
they
slow down,
want.
say hi, make themselves available, know their neighborhoods, and then get all that neighborhood policing, and then not lose investigative services, not lose the hope team, not lose,
Right.
yeah. So there's a lot.
All the detectives, a variety of detectives.
Yes.
I think you have 5 or 6 detectives, and we get the specialized ones, which is good, but.
Yes.
So at the time that we had our own police in Troutdale, right? And the concept of the merger with Multnomah County Sheriff's came up. I then and do now believed that the Multnomah County Sheriffs were more professional, right? Now, where I see the difference is that the Troutdale police were more invested in Troutdale being a well-ran city, because that was their charter, that's where they worked, and that's what they're gonna have to face day in, day out. Meaning that if the environment were better, their lives and jobs were better. If the environment was worse, it had a direct impact. While the Multnomah County Sheriff's has a much bigger charter. They're taking care of all of Multnomah County, primarily the more rural areas, but they take care of all of Multnomah County. And their focus is easily diverted on their charter. And so it's harder to get that in Troutdale focus. And I don't know how you do that. Definitely open to ideas, but I wanted to make that distinction of what I noticed.
Clarification. You said did you feel they were more professional than our police?
Yes. Just from my interactions with them, they did seem more professional. I mean, all good, but I did find on average, the sheriff officers, sheriff deputies were more professional than the Troutdale police. I just found that the Troutdale police were more invested in the future of Troutdale, because that's where they worked. That's where they're gonna have to get up the next morning and work again. So you got a little more personalized service than what we get now. Now, the question is that's the level of service. It would mean if we were to do our own Troutdale police, that's extra overhead for our administration staff. It would be extra cost, right? And people within our city have different values. Some value, I just want to get through life as cheap as I can, and some value, I want to get through life as safe as I can, right? So what's the willing of the public to bear the cost?
I found that most cities that have their own police are paying more than we're paying. Not substantially more, but more. It
Cities-
varies by city.
Cities of comparable size.
Yeah. Larger, smaller. You know, if they have their own police, I just did it by population. That was the only metric that I had. And I found that most of them were paying more, but not like double or, you know, more than 1.5 or something of that nature.
I am aware that we don't live in a vacuum, right? What goes on around us also matters and counts. It will have an effect on us if eventually. So I do have in the back of my mind, you want a healthy sheriff's department. You want a healthy Gresham Police Department. And of us making a decision that does something different, weakens either of those, then that can also have a effect that we should consider. Sorry, we're now over the comments.
Well, I just don't know that if you're not happy with the service you're getting, you stay with it because the alternative could be worse. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think with Troutdale Police, I think you're gonna get more personalized service. I do think it'll be more expensive, and what's the willingness of the public to bear that? But I'm also very cognitive if for some reason it weakens the sheriff's office, that's gonna have an effect. Yeah, you want me to clarify that?
No, I just don't know that I would make a decision based on how it might affect. I'm worried about the 16,000 people here,
Right,
than more than I'm worried about Wood Village.
it's the primary focus, yes. I grant you that.
I would say that even though I agree with what you said, Tanny, the primary focus is Troutdale and the residents and the safety of our city, I still think adding a question to the 10 of if we do go through the process of finding a cost for a Troutdale Police Department, adding in there what it would cost to have a 3 cities police department. I feel like it's more information that will help guide us in a decision moving forward.
Definitely.
I don't think we should leave it off the list of 10 and either, and I get the reasoning for number 6, but one thing that I'm not necessarily eager to jump on board with, and I know it doesn't say this on 6, but when I first saw this question, or this number, I had the thought of what Gresham was thinking about doing and hiring private security for their city, and I'm not necessarily interested in going down that road, and that's how number 6 read to me, even though I know that that's not necessarily what that meant. But I think having the number 2 talking specifically about park rangers, code compliance officers, FTE, removing that private security, but I get what you're saying for parks. I think removing those words, letting number 2 carry the brunt of what those additional non-sworn FTE officers are, and then changing 6 to incorporate more of a question to answer what path we go down if we do choose to investigate going into a 3 cities type policing model.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I have the exact same concerns.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's.
That, and then I'm also not a fan of red light cameras personally.
Either am I, but at the same time, my mind is changing.
I'm okay.
My mind is changing now because at some point it's still some level of control that we get within our cities to create safer roads and streets, even though I don't like them because it's the exact opposite of neighborhood policing.
It is safer though, because people act kind of weird around.
But if you get caught with a ticket, guess what? You're more,
Another person's not really hard.
maybe,
It's weird.
but you get in a ticket or a fender bender, you're more likely probably to slow down.
They are costly.
Yeah, can be.
Question for you though, which might come up with council's questions, is we talk about park rangers, code compliance. From a budgetary standpoint, do those coming out of a different fund then?
No, they actually come out of the general fund.
They all come out of the general fund? So it
Yeah.
wouldn't come out
It's all
of
the
parks,
same.
or it wouldn't
Yeah.
come out of,
Yeah, Parks is all
Well,
out of
Parks is
general
all out of
fund,
general
community,
fund.
that portion of community development would come out of general fund. It's the building side where you get permits and things like that, that's a separate side,
wondering if it was all the same.
yeah.
Are we missing any other questions?
What
Yeah,
about
is
the
there
lease
anything
on this
Tweak
building?
or change there, or?
I think, like I said,
Right.
just adding in language for discussing the three cities topic, just making sure those words are in there, so it doesn't get lost, doesn't get forgotten about.
Another question.
Yeah,
And does anybody object to your comments on 6 and 2?
it's not, I mean, I'm not ready to fall on my sword over that, but I'd rather not focus and even waste time on deliberating about private security. I'd rather focus on FTEs, I'd rather focus on
Parks and code.
Troutdale, I'd rather focus on the three cities, I'd rather focus on Gresham, I'd rather focus on the county.
Well, you see, I'm in full agreement with what he's saying. I'm just wondering if there's anybody that has an objection to anything.
What I heard that on number 5, including the cost for a 3-city.
And it's probably a tall task to take on, and I know a consultant's not gonna say it's gonna cost you $12
Well,
to go into a three cities police
Yeah, but I'm
district.
thinking, you
But
know, they could
having-
probably break that down, because I'm thinking you've got 17,000 Troutdalians, you've got 10,000 Fairvillians,
Fairviewans,
Fairviewians,
Wood Villagers,
and,
4,000 Wood
3,000 Wood
Villagers.
Villagers. Like, I guess you could just take it for Troutdale, and then you could just extrapolate what it might cost, even though the startup cost may, and just what more do you have to percentages. So anyway, yeah, I'll add that on number 5.
And probably on the technicality, one city probably has to own it, others have to contract, right?
I think inside that, there's various different models,
Uh,
because there's districting, there's
Does it fit?
contract services, there's, you know,
Okay.
Would be
Yeah,
better
so
if
it's
we
not close
all
Right.
owned it,
I
so
think
it
that was
took-
6.
What about the lease on this building?
It expires at the same time our MCSO contract expires. So,
Any thought to us not doing a 10-year contract?
Have they even asked for what they're thinking?
haven't asked anything. You know, probably, it's almost like, it's like a cart or horse kind of thing, you know, chicken or egg kind of thing. Well, do we figure out who we're gonna have for law enforcement? Because I will tell you, Gresham would probably want to have this building for another precinct if we selected them. We would want it if we did our own. And we probably don't mind having Multnomah County stay here if we selected them. Because, you know, before, you know, having this 24/7 building open is really kind of a nice thing to have. Whoever's operating it, so.
True,
It is.
true, yeah.
I would think that that's a heck of a carrot.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah, because if we get seriously about these other options and if Gresham is competitive, I mean, we did have the problem, and I had coffee with Chief Goldberg 2 weeks ago, Gresham's current police chief, and he said jokingly, well, you know, love to have, you know, add you guys to our kingdom, and because he says that the department's doing much better in terms of officer-wise and stuff like that, and you know, we had him here as our chief for a year and a half, 2 years. He was the one 2 times because we had Steve before Doug, and then Travis was before that. So he was a great guy, a great department. But then the one thing that we heard last month was, yeah, but with all the calls on the west side of the city of Gresham, how many of your officers are going to get sucked that direction, you know, out of district with Gresham? And the bigger question you ask yourself, again, no judgment on it, do we want to be married to Gresham on another essential service in addition to fire? It's a question. So I think those are 2 legitimate questions to ask once we figure out what the level of service we're going to ask them to quote.
What other questions are we missing?
I was just gonna, do we want to look at something shorter than 10 years?
We need to be open to that for sure, but whatever gets us the best rate for the time we put in too, I think that's gonna be more of a.
Obviously, the longer term, we get you the best rate.
Yeah.
Well, there's investments in vehicles and equipment and stuff like that. So how many years do you need to have to still make those investments viable? At what point is it too short and somebody goes, it's not worth us putting money into it?
Well, they've been in it for 10 years now.
Yeah,
But yeah, but the county, we have the different leverage with the county than the other two cities, because this would be a major headache for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office if we said, we just as soon not lease the building to, we just as soon let Gresham have it, or our own police department have it. And how that impacts the overall cost, I don't know, in terms of their negotiating.
Yeah, I think this is a bigger leveraging item than we're anticipating right now, but at the same time, it's not worth, I don't think it's worth taking advantage of that fact. A shorter lease could be better in the long run if we do find a different way forward for policing, but at the same time, if we have a short lease and then we don't have an answer, and then we come back and say, well, now you need us.
Yeah,
So now here's the cost.
because here's the problem for them is because, you want stability, and when the county takes over, when they took over for 2014, they took on a commitment for another 25 employees generally. And if they're going to pick up it again, and they're gonna do it for us again, that's a big investment. They're gonna want a long-term investment from us to know that all that time and energy to recruit and staff and all the things you churn to keep the employees going over there. And they're gonna want whatever contract law enforcement, they're gonna probably want the building to be the same thing. Well, why would it be different length of time? Is the question they might ask.
Well, when we went into it, it was really portrayed to be the greatest thing since the Twinkie. And it's close, but it's not as great as the Twinkie. And if you're in it for 10 years,
Yeah.
I would just think you would want an ability to move out of it if it got bad enough.
Yeah, I don't have the contract in front of me. I think there's probably gotta be a clause in there that either
No,
party
it's
can
gonna-
terminate it sooner.
Yeah,
yeah, there was.
Somebody's gotta be creative on the next.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is you'd have to have an ability to terminate the lease too.
yeah. From my point of view, it's just a contract that allows us to have better requirements that they do actually have to do certain things and be in district, and the chief actually spends this amount of time, and those kind of things. In terms of the ticket writing, you can't really put that in contract because the police unions go crazy about, oh, you're doing quotas now, and we have to write so many tickets, and you don't want to cross that line because it makes the on the road people, and the citizens get nervous too. Oh, they're just writing tickets because they need to make the money, and we don't want to get to that impression.
I think Kenny's got something there. We do need to tie the lease to the contract, right? Because if you're doing the contract, the lease is a great carrot on it, right?
Well, it's a
And
very
if you're not doing the
favorable lease
contract-
for them as it stands
But I
now.
think no matter if it's Multnomah County or Gresham, if we choose either one of them, we have to leverage the building no matter what it is to
Right.
get the best.
Yeah, well, if you're not doing the contract, you need the building, right? So we've got to tie it together.
But question-wise,
Anything else of these 10? I made that change on number 5. Is there any other specific changes that the committee?
And you got 6 and 2,
What did you want in 2 and 6?
private security removed.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think, are we all?
does that come down to making a decision, or should we leave that on for the council?
What's that?
Well, what you're saying,
Removing
what you're
private
saying is
security.
it shouldn't be part of the question.
We could have that back in if we wanted, but
Yeah,
true.
the
Okay,
council can look at
okay.
anything. Yeah, so
but
just
for right now, we just take it out.
Okay.
I think.
I think we take
Ray,
that,
let's take
we're
it
not
out.
suggesting it.
just took out private security in 2 because 6 didn't reference it. It just kind of referenced
Yep.
what was above. So let's take out private security. That is always a questionable thing. There are big organizations in the area and nationally that do private security. It's just, you just get the feeling of mall cops, observe and report,
Well, that's the whole thing. You're still gonna need a police officer. And yes, granted, you're probably still gonna need a police officer with some code compliance.
Gosh, I see it as a dangerous world out there. I don't think I'd be putting somebody less than a cop out there, right?
I do think you should put something in about the lease, because I think that's all part of this.
Well, what I heard you say then is that we should have a market analysis done of what is the appropriate lease rate for the building. We should get an outside market review.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
To see what value we have. here.
Yeah, because
What is this building worth? Because, and if you talk to Eric Mueller, he wants to change the lease too, because there's a lot of things in there. We have to do all this. We're responsible for the janitorial and all of the maintenance and the painting. And it's like,
yeah,
it's just, and we don't really do much control the space at all. And it's just,
shouldn't be paying for hardly any of that.
yeah,
What is the appropriate lease rate
yeah.
that we can leverage, regardless of who we go with?
And what is CAM and what isn't CAM?
And you know that's the first question the county's gonna be asking, like, is if we get our own building, how much is it gonna cost us?
Yes.
Right, so we gotta know the numbers.
How much maintenance are we taking care of, how much maintenance they taking care of, that, a big part of it too,
Right.
because that's an ongoing cost all year long.
I'm just adding under 11, have an analysis completed by a competent commercial
Yeah.
real estate consultant to determine the appropriate value, rental value, lease value of the TPCC.
Yeah.
And then maybe even, maintenance for the year, per year.
Well, yeah, what should be triple?
What is
Lease
common
should
area?
be,
It
triple.
really, it really should be as close to triple net as you can get it.
Yeah, even though there's no property tax involved, but, if up to 3 tripled, yeah, but there's still, the other parts of that, okay.
Yeah, because who knows, well, the sheriff's gonna go up, I need my parking lot. Yeah.
With all this discussion going on, are you three having gut feel or having any thoughts on this?
I agree completely with the topics and the questions and all the additions so far. No heartburn.
All right, that helps, thank you.
My only thing would be, if we're paying for a service and we're not getting it, I would be questioning why we're paying for the service we're not getting. Right?
So what
And if
checks,
it's in the
what checks and
contract-
balances are gonna be in there?
Actually, if it's in the contract, why aren't they providing that,
Yeah.
what we agreed to 10 years ago?
The only thing that we really hold their feet to the fire on, and we have, is the 950 hours we're supposed to provide for summer deputy coverage. They actually had the beach deputy stay through the end of September to get them up to the additional hours that was needed to complete that 950 hours. So I had that accounting on my desk, where we got that 950 hours.
Because were we looking at that, right? Is that what,
Pardon?
that was the recommendation, right? Was to relook at that
Right.
950 hours to
Well,
see if
yeah.
it really needs to be there for that long.
Yeah, this last summer was the first summer of this, the memo of understanding, because it was like locking 2 deputies on the beach 40 hours a week in the summer was silly, because there's a lot of those days, there's nobody else at the park because it's raining. And so, and the county says, well, they have to be beach deputies, so we can't make them go out and do anything else in the city, or we're gonna get credit for the hours. So we said, no. You'll get credit for the hours, and in consultation with me and Doug Asbo, the chief, they can go do other duties as assigned, like movies in the park. The beach deputy, Travis, great young man, he came up and he joined Nick up there. So we had 2 deputies up there in movies in the park, which was kind of nice, because we had 400 people there on those 2 nights. It was nice to have their presence up there together. And honestly, it's nicer for the deputy not to be all by himself sitting up there, because it's just easy just to go sit in your car, because, but with Travis and Nick, the 2 of them, they were just sitting there, the car was right there, not far from the ball field, and they were just out talking to the public, just actually engaging, and it was great to have. So that was like part of what we were allowed to do, is that we kind of said, let's conduct it differently, where we can use those 950 hours, and if we don't need them at the beach, let's put them somewhere else that the community actually benefits from, like that, so.
Right. Victoria, do you have any gut feel thoughts?
On fire, there's no mention.
We haven't moved
haven't
on
done-
fire yet. We're still.
Oh, I thought
Sorry.
we just did it fast.
No,
Okay.
we're just about ready, if we're good to move on to police, then, or from police. Randy, you good? Good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's, move on from, good?
Oh, yeah, we do have a termination agreement of 45 days, which is pretty dang short. If we have other law enforcement that we want to use, or if they don't want to do our law enforcement.
Everybody going.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah,
But the agreement shall provide at least 24 months written notice to the other party. It's a 45-day written notice of intent to terminate upon receipt of the intent. The city manager, the sheriff, and the chair of the county board of commissioners, or the chair's designation, shall hold a meeting, the purpose of which will be to understand the notice of intent, including background, the reasons, and review the alternative. So basically, there's a 45-day cooling off period, and then 2 years. You can
So that's
cancel.
not so good.
Yeah,
It's not-
but like I said, they hire a lot of people and they have commitments to employees and stuff, so from their point of view. Anyway,
all right, so let's
so
move
I
on
added
to-
11 and I tweaked number 5 and number 2.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Now we're moving on to fire protection questions. Mr. Ram.
yeah, fire. Fire is the one that, honestly, from my point of view, is not so black and white. I mean, if you look at the recommendations, there's a lot of stuff on the law enforcement one, but when it comes to fire, it's different. You know, fundamentally, fire and police are different. Police, you have them out there all the time patrolling. They're on the roads doing something. You can provide, you know, this amount of coverage we want. Fire just comes when you call, and it's not quite the same type of resource. And then how it's provided, we're impacted by the city of Gresham and their problems financially, and what are they going to be providing? And this whole issue of the fire district, you know, is the fire district going to come? Do we want to ask our citizens to do that? Would the citizens approve a fire district? Because a fire district, as I mentioned 2 meetings ago, and I've gone through and looked, there is just a handful of cities in the metro area who still pay for fire out of the general fund. The vast majority of cities in the metro area pay for it through the fire district, so a separate property tax levy for your property tax bill. The only reason that Portland still is the big fire department is because their base rate for property taxes is like $7 a thousand. Troutdale's is $3.71. So if you add a fire district to the Troutdale citizens, now the rate goes up to, say, to the map, like $6.20. Still less than Portland pays overall, but you take then the fire department out of the fire coverage out of the general fund, which again, the consequence is allows more money for parks and police. So that's why fire has got a different element to it. That's why there's less numbers that I could come up with here for you to talk about, because depending on what Gresham did tell us last week, we met, the 4 city managers met last week, and Gresham is doing their due diligence on a fire district. They need to figure out, as I was mentioning, I think Jordan and Carol, before the meeting started, we were talking about this a little bit. For Gresham, they have to figure out, well, what is the financial impact, first of all, to our citizens? You know, what is the tax rate? What is it going to cost our citizens? What will the city save if it gets shifted from our general fund to a separate taxing district? But then, since we're in a situation where the Gresham Fire Department would become Fire District 10, because you remember when Mike McKeel was here, Fire District 10 doesn't have any fire trucks or firemen, firewomen. They have a couple stations, that's all they own anymore. So if a fire district came to fruition on East County, it would basically take over the Gresham Fire Department, right? And we'd change the numbers and the lettering on the side of all the trucks and the cars and stuff. But Gresham goes, well, how do we get back for all the money our citizens have invested in all of our cars and our hoses and our fire stations? And how do we get all that money back? Does the fire district buy it from us? Does the fire district have to, the other citizens not in City of Gresham, does Troutdale have to pay a separate fee to buy their share of that fire department? You know, that's what they're trying to figure out. What happens if we do approve a fire district? What happens to all of our assets? How does that happen? So they're looking at that now. They haven't been able to find a consultant. They've 3 times they put out for a bid for a consultant to help answer that question. They haven't gotten any people showing up. There's just very few people out there who do this kind of consulting work. They've gone to the Oregon Fire District Association. They can't help them. The last city, I think, was Newburgh 5, 6, 7 years ago, who actually joined a fire district. when this happened. I mean, Estacada tried to do it 2 years ago, but after remember the fires a couple years ago, Estacada was really pissed off at Clackamas Fire District for not responding very well. They voted no to join, and so that was the last chance. There might have been a city fire department joining, and so that's why they're struggling. So they're trying to figure out somebody who can tell them what are the financial impacts of it. And the other three cities, the other three of us says, well, when you figure out who that expert is, let us know, because maybe we want them to do partially the same kind of study. Say, what would it cost? What would the impact be on the citizens of Troutdale if they approved a fire district? The other thing we talked about too is that a fire district is a 2, 3, potentially a 4-year period of time to go through the process, to do the marketing, to get the information out to the citizens, to hold the bond, the levies. Will Gresham kind of work with us on annual contracts for a while? And I assume if Gresham's looking to go fire district, they say, sure, fine, because we're in the same boat as everybody else. We may not have a Gresham Fire Department. So all of that to say, that's what's making this whole fire issue one very complicated to figure out. And then in the background, let's just assume that Gresham says, nah, we're going to stick with our local levies for 5 years. Every 5 years, we'll have the citizens for more money, and we'll keep our fire department. And Troutdale, you're going to have to pay, your fair share. Does everybody know when somebody says pay your fair share, whether it's President Biden or the union rep or whatever it is, that's a completely subjective term. What do you mean fair? Fair to who? Or how do you define fair? Right now, the 3 cities pay less per capita for fire service than the city of Gresham. And one recent Gresham City Council member said last spring, after the bond levy failed, well, we've got to make sure in the next contract that those 3 cities pay their fair share, or pay as much as the Gresham citizens pay. So we know they're going to come and ask for more money, not just inflation, but more money. Our pushback for years has been, well, great, as soon as you let us pick your fire chief or fire chief, as soon as you let us vote on your budget, as soon as you let us vote on your union contract, as soon as you give us control over your service levels, I mean, how you do dispatches and how many people are on a truck, I mean, as soon as you let us be involved in all those decisions, then we'll pay the same amount as Gresham. But until then, no, we don't have to pay as much as Gresham because we don't have the same authority that the citizens of Gresham have over controlling the fire department. So it's what they call in the law minority interest. The minority interest for a single share of stock is always worth less than the majority owner's same share of stock, because the majority owner has control. As a minority owner, you don't. So closely held, I can't go down that road of law, closely held corporations, but it's the same argument that no, we're not going to pay the same as Gresham, but that's a negotiation. So we just have to wait and see what happens with Gresham and their fire district pursuits, honestly. It's kind of hard to, what do we charge off and do on fire? I guess that, I'm asking you guys a question in this list.
I do know that Gresham, I mean, they're planning on going out for another attempt in May.
Yes.
So they had their sights on last week. That didn't work. So they are forging ahead with next May for their next fire bond levy.
And again, even if it passes, that's a stopgap, that's 5 years.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing is, regardless, they're still going to come at the 3 cities, say pay your fair share. And fair share doesn't exist with that because, like Ray said, we don't have a fair say. So regardless of how much we pay, we don't have the same authority as Gresham does. So again, it comes down to control.
Added to that, not only do we not have the control, but we don't actually get to keep any of the assets that we pay for. It's their assets.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, in terms of the cost, what are we paying to maintain assets? And I mean, is it just the assets that actually roll out here? I don't know.
Do we get the same service level?
Yeah.
Right.
Response times.
And what's the factor of District 10 fire station in that mix?
Yeah.
I admit that our fire station isn't at the same par as some of the other fire.
It's still not up to code.
Yeah.
It needs to be
If you take a look
raised.
at the fire stations around, and ours is not really up to the same service level that the others are.
Ours?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Victoria had a comment about fire.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
I was wondering if on that consultant number 2, are we gonna add Fairview and Wood Village to that? offset?
I think it falls in line with the same thing with the policing contract is
Yeah.
if we're looking at it, at least have the language in there. Because honestly, I mean, Ray knows this and I'm sure you all know this as well, but Fairview and by extension, Wood Village is paying close attention to what we're doing right now, so.
Consult with the other two cities on cost sharing.
Then if we're requesting a bid from the city of Gresham for a 10-year contract, are they open to giving us any sort of control or any sort of say or any sort of, have you already asked on that?
That's the same thing
It's
with
the
the
fire
county.
department.
That's the same.
It's the fire department.
Yeah, see, that's the interesting thing though, because here's the thing, we could ask, I was thinking that same thing a few minutes ago, my mind was spinning, going, how would that work? Would they create a special user board for their fire department? Because right now it's the city council. The city council, the city manager hires and fires the fire chief. Does that mean, do we say, all right, for the fire chief, we have to have, let's just say, the 3 cities get to have 1 representative on this board that selects the fire chief or approves the fire contract. But the problem is, under the charter of City of Gresham, the city council still approves the budget. And it's a Gresham employee, the fire chief. And is it a recommendation from this board that has a representative from the 3 cities? And if it's a recommendation, is that really worth anything?
Is it ceremonial?
Yeah, it's hard to do when it's their, it's the same problem with Multnomah County Sheriff is, I think you were saying, it's their department, they own it, they pay for it, it goes to their budget. They're not gonna, how do you create a way for us to have any meaningful say? Maybe you could get them something that, a firing committee for the fire chief, maybe, get some control there. Gosh, what other, I can't think of anything else that they'd want to give up, because anything financially, whether it's a union contract or the budget, approved budget, I don't think they're gonna want to give us any meaningful.
No.
Well, maybe it's just something as simple as a QC committee, is just the 3, or the cities that make up the contract for fire service. Maybe it's just a panel of a representative from each city, just advising as far as the quality of service, the call levels, the call response times.
Well, it's the same quality of, like, the equipment and the station. If you don't meet a certain code, then there has to be some ramification back to the city of Gresham built into the contract of penalties or something if you don't meet certain obligations.
That's true, in the contract, you could put in metrics. I mean, currently, we do have a 3 cities user board that meets every 2 months, where Chief Lewis
Sorry, didn't mean to miss that.
sits down with us and we all get a report for our cities. That this is the response times, these are the types of calls, here's what happened. They recently cut out the detail of every single call in the city of Troutdale because the city attorney said there was privacy concerns. And
City of
pushed back-
Gresham?
Yeah,
Aren't they looking for a new attorney?
they just hired one.
Oh, they did? Oh, okay.
Right, but I pushed back and says,
Public record.
if I don't know where the calls are coming in Troutdale, how do I know if there's a problem area? How do I know
How would
what's
that be
going
a
on?
privacy concern?
Right, and, pardon?
It's published data,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It's not privacy, we're not asking for names of who you treated.
Or medical
It's
diagnosis.
the address of where the fire truck went to. And then I went back to our contract, because our contract says they'll provide monthly reports in substantially conformance with the attached. And the attached had 1 page of the detail of every call location. So I'm waiting for their attorney to go, oh, really? Okay, so anyway. But we do have that, but basically we sit there and they tell us what's going on and the changes are happening. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the Gresham Fire. They're wonderful to work with, but in some ways it's almost like they tell us, here's what's going on in your cities, and they pat you on the head going, now we'll take care of things from here on out. Because, I'm still frustrated that we didn't learn that they fired Mitch Snyder until it came out in the newspaper.
I was gonna say until it was a story.
Not even a courtesy call from the city of Gresham to the 3 city managers saying, oh, by the way, yesterday Mitch left. But no, I find it, I see it in the papers. And it's like, he's our fire chief too, not that we get to fire him, but courtesy should say you should have called us. So, but see, that's
That's our fair share, Ray.
that's your fair there, that's what's fair. And again, that's one of the things, is that we wouldn't hope that police, if we hired them for police, we'd have the same issue, but.
Did you want to add that to the contract, or?
Well, I guess that's the other thing, I guess, we didn't put on here is there, because our current contract for fire is pretty vanilla and bland of any
Basic.
metrics at all.
Yeah.
So number 5 would be.
Maybe it's just
review-
adding more teeth to the user board
You
that
review
already exists.
contract to enhance metrics regarding service levels.
Yeah, if you look at it,
And
service level has.
And penalties if not
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's good input. Service level has an impact to what residents pay for insurance, right?
Yeah.
If your
Yes.
service level is poor, then the insurance costs go up.
Yeah, I can't remember what that line is, but basically it says, you'll get the same service as Gresham gets. Okay.
Well, it even varies with aggression, so I don't know what that means.
Right, it does.
This is an average.
Yeah, it's subject to interpretation of, again, fairness.
So when they talk about us paying our fair share, right, there's gonna be a delta between where that number is, and then if we're just gonna go our own direction.
Yeah.
At some point, it's gonna be, this isn't worth it.
At some point, someone, hopefully a consultant, hopefully the professional consultant that doesn't exist for anybody else, will give us what that bar.
Where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Fire is another weird thing because we don't have near the leverage that we have with police.
Right.
We technically, Gresham so far is a competitor, and we could start our own police department again. It may cost us more than we want, may need a bond levy for the citizens to approve for the startup cost, because I pulled a number out of my, where, maybe it's $5 million, yeah. But to be able to hire everything we need, the cars and all the things we need to do to start the police department, we could do that, but we do own a building. We don't own any fire stations, but we do have a nice police building. And Fairview has a nice police area in their city hall, don't they? Have a nice.
Yeah.
They do. That's where the detectives are
Yeah.
not housed, operate out of.
But obviously, the easiest way to do all of this, if we were gonna go that direction, would be the fire district.
Right, that's the only place we could go, and the thing that goes with that is, if we join the Fire District 10, like unincorporated, then we would definitely have more resources in the general fund to do things like our own police department, but Gresham Fire District 10 would just hire Gresham Fire to provide our coverage that we're getting now. There's no competitor to Gresham Fire,
Well, McKeel did bring up the point that maybe that creates leverage to contract with Gresham.
yeah.
So are you saying that if we go District 10 is gonna be going to Gresham anyway?
Unless Gresham joins them, yes. Did Mike talk about this? I can't envision that if Wood Village, Fairview, and Troutdale all voted to join Fire District 10, that they would go out and create their own fire department.
I thought he said that.
If what?
If the 3 smaller cities join Fire District 10, would they want to go back to being a real fire department?
He did speak to that, and then he
said that.
spoke about
Hybrid.
having Gresham contract
Yeah.
with Fire District 10.
So kind of
With the new district made up of 10 and the 3 cities.
Yeah, under the fire contract, it says, Gresham shall provide fire suppression, fire prevention, emergency medical services, and specialty rescue and response services to the 3 cities. The level of service to be provided shall be the same level that is provided to the 3 cities as of the effective date of this agreement. Oh, it's not even the same as Gresham. Whatever we gave you on the date we signed this agreement, that's the same level of service you're gonna get. Is there metrics? I don't know in here that says what that, so yeah, well, no, we don't get what Gresham gets, we get what we had before the contract was signed. It does define that Gresham will maintain continuous 24/7 fire suppression and emergency medical services at a level provided at the signing of this agreement, mutual aid automatic aid agreements, providers, so basically, they promised to continue doing for the next 10 years what they did for the last 10 years, and nowhere in here did it define what that was.
That's a very important point. You're not gonna let that drop and take it. Right. You make sure that we close that. Yeah, tie that one up.
Yes, yeah. What did we get before? So we'll know if you're missing it now.
I do have a question for Tammy, if you don't mind.
Yes,
I do want to bounce this off you. When you create a fire district, it is a relief to our general fund, yes. But you are creating another government entity.
yes.
Do you have concerns that that'll just run away?
Do I?
Yeah, I guess I'm asking for an opinion.
I mean, it could. I think at the end of the day, the ability to be able to do fire and police better would weigh that out for me.
Okay, so if you're doing a fire district that relieves general fund and you're able to do a better job with police, you're good with it, because it's a fair trade.
Because you would take the fire district, right? And so you would relieve that 3 million from the general fund. And you would still have that money. You could use that towards your own police,
We could, we don't know where it gets spent, but we could,
potentially.
yeah. Yeah, okay, I like that.
I'm adding a number 6 here in my own mind. I'm already adding it. Because I was just reading this contract, and we've done this a couple times, but it hasn't been every year. It says, in addition to monthly reports in accordance with Appendix A, Gresham shall make an annual presentation in the first calendar quarter of each year to the city council of each of the cities, summarizing the prior calendar year monthly management reports and progress on system performance and productivity improvements. A standards of service document shall be prepared identifying the response methods and equipment employed by Gresham Fire. The standard shall be provided to the 3 cities, and the annual report shall include any proposed or implemented changes to the standard. So I'm basically adding a number 6 to tell the city council, make sure you schedule them in the first quarter of 2024 to do those things, to come to city council and do those things.
Tammy, I just want to say, sharing your comment that you gave just before our city manager was speaking there, so.
Okay.
I share it.
I know, just at the regular meeting, we've been asking for him to come, fire. I mean, we've been, as a committee, it was one of our things was to have him come, and we haven't seen him in a couple of years present to us at all.
Peace out.
Or the monthly reports. I know we see
Yeah,
the
we don't see that
sheriff
either.
reports monthly, but not those.
Frankly, if you want any of that stuff, you gotta go to a council meeting. That's the only place they
It's
go.
been a couple of years.
Because they're not
In the
required.
beginning, he
Yeah.
used to-
The old
they
fire
didn't
chief
come.
would
Pardon me?
come. The old fire chief came.
But now it's just,
They're not required to come to PSAC, they are required to come to council under the contract. It would be nice if they would come visit you guys also once a year and talk about it, but.
Yep.
But I have an issue of paying for something, I don't know what it means. I mean, or even having control. I mean, personally, I'd like some control in what they do and for the 3 cities, for
Especially if they come
Troutdale.
back and charge us just as much as a Gresham.
Asterisk more.
yeah.
Well, and you know they're gonna charge more, because you know their buildings are needing to be repaired, they're gonna want more trucks or bigger trucks and everything comes with a big cost, and they're gonna try to stick it to us, and I really hope that everybody's really being alert when they look at the contracts.
Yeah, we'd help pay, but not have anything to show for, basically.
It is odd going through this whole long contract of 18 pages, and that's all it says about what we're getting.
Yeah.
You are going to get literally what you had before. And without even defining what we had before.
That's
Oh, we
pretty
know
sad.
it's great.
But let's say, you know, the cost goes up, let's say $1 million, right? From where it is today. But it's the same service. How do you justify that to the citizens?
I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
You do that.
Well, it might not be any worse
You
than
get
what you're
to do
getting
that.
today, but it's gonna cost you more.
Because we don't know what we're doing.
Is something not working, right?
Well, it was weird that it transferred over to the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office Wi-Fi. And it should have been just on the city of Troutdale, which it was before. Yeah, Paul, if for some reason I did something weird, would you email me to let me know that you can't hear us or you lost the meeting?
Did he say something?
No, he didn't.
Oh,
We just had up on the screen on our Zoom computer, it just said, oh, you're logged into the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office
I wasn't
Wi-Fi.
paying attention, I'm not chair, so.
Anyway,
Good catch.
so I've added a 5 and a 6 to that list, and I've modified number 2 to include, so I've included on number 2 to consult with Wood Village and Fairview about cost sharing of that, together doing that consultant. Added 5, which is to have our current contract reviewed, to come up with some ways to define the metrics regarding our service levels. And 6, make sure that the council schedules in the first quarter of next year, Discussion Fire to come and do that presentation for us.
Yeah.
Anything else to add here? Ken? Good.
Me? Yeah, I think this is great. I think the mistake would be to do nothing.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
There's a big unknown out there, it's coming fast.
The only other thing related to this too is I'll put these other documents, I will circulate them. It's December 13th, it'll go before council. I'll circulate the changes to make sure I didn't miss anything for everybody. And then the issue is, who's going to be responsible to sit their chair or sit over here and to make the presentation to council? Is how do you want to do that? Do you want to have everybody's of course free to be there, but
Yeah.
who do you want to?
I would say let Carol.
Let's not let Carol.
What?
Yeah.
You're the vice chair, come on.
Of course I would do whatever you told me
To essentially say, here's what we talked about, here's what.
I never did that at home.
Of course.
If you're not comfortable, I'm not.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness, you can really do it, just something I never.
I think for the public is just to kind of go through.
Maybe
all-
even if it's Carol and Tanny, both just present the questions. You guys comfortable with that?
Yes,
It's usually
A
better.
sub vice chair?
yes, we are.
Yes, you're the subject matter expert on everything.
And I would probably, I'd probably give you a brief outline to maybe to think about, including, probably just go through the minutes, just because you're not just telling the council, you're also telling the public.
Yeah.
This is what we've done, and so you kind of go through the minutes, and we met here, we talked about this, and you have the minutes. Then we met here, we had these experts come in and talk to us about these issues, and we had these experts.
I can share with you my
That
notes
would be
too.
good,
Yeah, and so that would probably be, so that's really all you're doing.
And when
It's
are we doing this?
December 13th.
You sick that day?
I'm sick.
Is it the 13th, whatever that second Tuesday, and
I'll make sure you have a warm welcome.
a warm and hearty welcome.
Yeah,
That's a very good idea.
December
For all of us
12th.
who've sat there alone.
The 12th, sorry, the 12th.
Oh, the
We're
20th.
gonna have a few people.
Yeah, we have 2 chairs, perfect.
So it's always easier when you're sitting with somebody, but yeah.
Okay.
The mayor makes everyone feel welcome.
Yes, he does.
You do.
Warm and
ask Lynn Peterson if I felt her, and if I made her feel
make sure you
welcome.
wear a collar.
Yeah, exactly. It is.
Yes.
It actually is, yes, you missed that notice.
All right, everybody good with questions on fire? Okay, I've got all head nods, yes. And we are on to comments. Let's do a quick round of room. Victoria,
No, we covered it all, I think.
covered it all? Okay, Charlie,
Good.
good?
I'm good.
Aaron's good. Kenny, I know you got lots.
No, I was just gonna say, is this committee, I know this committee sunsets, but is there gonna be any need for any follow-up, like with the consultants or anything?
I think we had well, I'm not gonna speak for Ray, but I guess I am. What I was gonna say was, I had the understanding that once we got to that level, then it would be a council
Okay.
conversation, but, again, having
I guess I would just encourage, once we get to that point, not meaning to cut you
Yeah,
off.
that's what I was gonna
Feel
say.
free to public comment, come in and give us some feedback.
Right, I guess
That's what I
council
was
could
gonna say.
decide, how, does everybody on the committee want to continue to do these tasks or something on this
Yeah.
list? I guess it's the council, good question.
Let's
Well,
get
and
some
I
more
think-
information before we make any decisions to.
Yeah, and I think it could be an ongoing, I mean, this won't be done on December 12th, right?
Right.
This isn't gonna be done for a few years, whatever decision we come to. I think keeping, this committee might sunset now, but I think keeping it active after or moving forward, once we decide which road we're gonna choose to go down, I think would be
Might be
advisable for the
helpful.
council. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
So can you explain that process? So we present on the 12th, and then city council kind of, I'm sure they're gonna look at the contract, they're gonna get consultants, what happens when consultants come? How's that whole process? I can't remember what we did before.
I don't know what we did before, but I'd imagine what we're gonna do is we're gonna, as a council, take this recommendation, decide whether or not to chew on it a little bit more, and then come up with the ask. And if we do decide to go with a consultant for both, or one, or none, whatever, I'm sure that then Ray's gonna take charge and get that
Right,
moving
it's
forward.
basically, the council will give direction to staff, this is what we want you to go do now,
This is the focus.
yeah.
And they may add or distract from what we
Right.
advised, you know.
That's why I think right now at this point, adding, even though I advocated to remove the private security, I think adding more questions is better. That way, if something does get chewed up, we still have the meat of what we were trying to do.
So I subscribe to the council agenda, and it gets emailed to me, and something I can look at before council meeting, see if there's anything of concern. If you're not doing that already, you probably should. Let our city recorder know. It would be interested in that information if you don't.
And then they
already
just
did.
send it to us?
Yeah, they'll send it to your email. And that way you can watch it and see what's coming up.
Okay.
Candy, you good? Okay. Randy?
Yeah, I would just encourage everybody to come to council on December 12th, not just Carol and Danny. And
Encourage everybody to come every time.
yeah, exactly.
More the better, the more opinions, more vocal from public.
Yeah, but be a part of that conversation, and then help your council come to a decision on, like I said, which road we're gonna go down. And whatever road we do decide to go down, and if it does lead towards asking the public for assistance, I hope that we're all ready to make that ask and do what we need to do to make sure we get a positive outcome. So I know I am.
I thought that was a very good discussion. I appreciate this committee. Thank you for the opportunity. That was good. Yeah, I was going to say something else, but it's really not even relevant. So I'm going to just stop there.
Sounds good. And I'll just say, I appreciate everybody, and yes, more comments in the future, the better, and don't be afraid to speak out if you can't attend. Feel free to shoot an email. So on that.
Move we adjourn.
Has anything else? Then I would take a motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries, we are adjourned.
So